Shut down for more than 40 days, and although pay is being reinstated for government workers and SNAP benefits are resuming, the cost of health care for millions of Americans remains uncertain. And here to discuss what could be ahead is Dan Savickas, Vice President of Policy and Government Affairs at the Taxpayers Protection Alliance. Good morning to you, Dan.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
So in reaching that deal to reopen the government, Congress failed to make a decision about the health care subsidies that expire at the end of the year. What is your group's position on where things stand now with these federal tax credits?
Well, we think there are a number of other ways to get the costs of health care down, whether that be premiums or over-the-counter costs. A lot of the driving forces behind healthcare costs going up have been provider consolidation and the rising cost of prescription drugs. So there are avenues to deregulate telehealth, allow more flexibility for pharmacists to prescribe, or repeal certain certificate of need laws, which make it harder to open hospitals in underserved areas. Right now, the Obamacare subsidies that are expiring are known as enhanced subsidies, and they've only gotten far more expensive since they began. So TPA thinks that there's a lot of room for lawmakers to be creative in how they approach getting the cost of healthcare down.
If Congress does fail to extend the subsidies, we know that the prices could go up for people who depend on these, but could there also be an impact on other insured Americans' healthcare premiums?
Well, certainly, the cost of healthcare premiums are going up across the board. You're seeing a 26% rise pre-subsidies, taking subsidies and Obamacare out of the equation. Premiums are going up 26% as a result of rising healthcare costs and general inflation. So the repeal of these subsidies is going to affect everybody, but is particularly going to affect those who fall under a benchmark of 400% of the federal poverty line who are eligible for these enhanced subsidies.
So what are your recommendations for people who are currently enrolled in these plans?
For people who are enrolled in the plans, I would advise them to try and get as creative as they can. I would also advise a little bit of fiscal restraint, knowing that it's probably going to be a while before Congress addresses this, and Congress is never one to move quickly. So I would recommend not holding your breath for a quick fix solution from this from Capitol Hill.
President Trump recently suggesting that money for these subsidies be sent directly to Americans instead of, quote, money-sucking insurance companies. How do you respond to that?
I think that's a bit of a distinction without a difference. I think it's very difficult to know what the actual healthcare costs are because of how little transparency there is, like from insurance companies, from pharmacy benefit managers who are a massive unsung source of high prescription drug costs. There needs to be much more transparency in the system before we can even realize whether a move like what President Trump suggested can actually be effective, because we don't know where the costs are coming from and whether shifting the massive federal outlays that we're seeing to patients as opposed to insurers would actually have a significant effect.
Yeah, and some experts are also saying that the plan could be a disadvantage for older Americans and those who have underlying health conditions. What do you think about that?
Again, that's probably right. People who are more expensive to insure would benefit less from just a straight stipend, for lack of a better word, from the federal government. So that would definitely impact them more so than younger, healthier Americans.
I know that we are expecting this vote in Congress coming up in December. What are your hopes for that? Are you expecting anything to come out of that?
Well, I don't know what I'd say I hope for, but I would say with the deal on the table, there's an agreement on a vote to happen at a later date in the Senate, and there's no such agreement in the House. So I honestly wouldn't expect any vote to happen in the House of Representatives probably until closer to 2027. The Senate will have a vote. I expect it to be very close. I couldn't tell you one way or another how that vote will go, but I would say I think to expect a longer wait on the House side for an agreement there because of the thin margins, because of a midterm election coming up within the year.
All right, that is Dan Savickas, Vice President of Policy and Government Affairs at the Taxpayers Protection Alliance. We thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.